Hello everyone, this is Blender Guppy. Welcome to a demo video. So I'm going to use random flow to create some random stuff. Maybe I'll show you the how I make the asteroid base and then use random starship for the spaceship that docks on the asteroid base. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of updates that are coming. And one of them is the sizes for the solvers. So the way the solvers are used for creating the patterns for the islands. So walk and radial. So their sizes now have a minimum and a maximum. And this is true for percentage and also number. And this is also in that's in random panels, and it's also in random loop extrude. You can see here the loop size. Loop panel size has two properties now. The one above is the maximum. The one below is the minimum. If you set the minimum to a higher value than the maximum, then the minimum becomes the maximum. So that's what's coming, and a few other improvements that I've made for this. So you'll see it all in the changelog video. And also with random starship. So thank you for the support so far with this add-on. So a whole new bunch of updates as well, especially with the in the front back category and also in the wings. So you would be using the categories now, the front back and the wings categories now with more frequency uh, compared to the version that you have. So with this update, the added functionality in the front back category, as well as the wings, makes them more useful and um, allows them to be used more frequently. Okay, so let's do the asteroid base. So this is going to be the asteroid. So let's do the Oumuamua, and this is going to be the base. We're going to use quick displacement to create the asteroid. And right here, I'm just trying to shape the base mesh before I use the displacement. So individual origins, and hopefully it looks right. Okay, so I added in some edge loops to make sure that the topology has even faces, because having a quad topology with uh, even areas for the faces or even sizes is good for displacement, because of the distribution of the and the sizes of the faces. So quick displacement. Okay, so these transformations here um, relates or affects the texture of the displacement, and these transformations here affects the base mesh, the size of the base mesh. So we're not going to affect this or modify this. So I'm just going to use clouds, and then uh, What's this coordinates object? Yeah, all faces. And the first thing that you have to see the displacement, we need to increase the subdivision. So this is the one that you're going to be mostly modify at first, increasing this. Now you will see the displacement, and we will increase the size to make the texture bigger, and also smooth the base mesh. So this is the smooth factor, and this is the repeat. Going to, yeah, like that, and displace the thing using increase the strength. We can do that, and let's reduce the subdivision somewhere around here. So we have this base mesh, and then we can, of course, modify the position of the texture. This is the rotation, this is the scale. Probably let's not affect the scale. Okay, so let's do this one. And then I'm going to modify this, the ends, both ends, to make it more Oumuamua. So this is the first layer of displacement. If you like, you can actually save the base mesh before using the displacement, because this is destructive. Okay, second layer, and increase the size, or the, yeah, increase it. Reduce the smoothing, probably use just 5 repeats, and the size, let's select the noise basis, select another noise basis. Let's go for Blender Original. I'm using the Maya theme, by the way. You can set it in the preferences in the themes. Okay, this is good. So another layer, and this time it will be the tertiary detail. Let's restore the settings and increase the subdivision a bit, and let's see the size too small. You can actually get a lot of details um even when not using a whole lot of subdivision. So you need to just balance it out to eyeball it. Let's do 2 cuts, and then let's shade smooth and see what we get. Okay, this is good. So this is I'm going to save this, controls asteroid base. So combined with textures, this is gonna look great. We have some distortions here. That's okay. Uh, you can fix it using smoothing. Control V and smooth vertices. Oh, probably not. It just lost its it lost the detail of that part. So combined with geometric details or the details in using the geometry and then the texture, this will look really good later on. Let's do the base or the sci-fi base. Okay, just a cube. The idea here is to create some random shapes that at some render distance looks like a sci-fi base, and then combined with texture, of course, will increase its believability. Okay, let's modify the base topology and make sure that it has somewhat of a even distribution of faces and also their sizes. Now I'm going to select these faces here and these faces here, not select the back, and then use random axis extrude. So random axis extrude is extrudes it, extrudes faces randomly in the XYZ axis, and you can set how many are extruded per iteration. So this is the iteration. So right now the axis order is XYZ, meaning that the X will be extruded first, then the Y second, and the Z last. So you can set their order here. You can set the Z as the first. If you use Z here and X here, that it doesn't mean that the axis loop become Z Y X as well. X the first property is X0, second is Y0, and Z is equal 0. They are static. So Z here, to modify this, you still have to uh use this property here in the z-axis. So this column here is the z-axis, y and x, except for the axis order, where you set the order of the axis, uh, the extrusion per axis. So x, since we're going to extruder first, and then second is the y, and then third is the z-axis, depending on the face selection. You can use this in edit mode. I just like to use it in um, object mode so the faces won't get in the way. You can turn off the overlay, but because of force of habit, I still have to. I just like to using it in object mode. Okay, so XYZ. So source extrude, meaning that number of times it will extrude from the source mesh. If you set it to 0, then yeah, if you set it to 0 and create an extrusion here or increase the number of extrusion here, it means that it will only extrude from the faces that the operator has generated. So for example, I've got one here in the X. Then if I increase the Y, then it will only look extrude from the faces that has been generated there. Okay, so source extrude, meaning that it can extrude from the how many times it can extrude from the source mesh. So X, let's use 3, and Y is 1, and Z is 2. 2 for Y as well. And then axis loop, um, I should I should probably change the name of this axis loop or not, or probably uh, loop extrude. No. So number of times it will be extruded. So X is 4, 4 in Y as well, and 4 in Z. And inner cut, I'm going to increase this to 4. So inner cut means that the amount of subdivision that each extrusion has, you can see the edges being added there. Okay. And now to make the faces smaller or make the extrusion smaller, we need to subdivide the source mesh. It will not really subdivide the source mesh, but just the just the 1, 2, 3, 4, just the source mesh that is created, the mesh, the copy of the source mesh that is created using the script. Base cut is 5 iterations. Okay, that's probably too much. I'm not seeing an extrusion from the Z axis, although I have faces that face the Z axis. Oh, because this is X. It's okay, Z. I'm having a thing with my eye. Okay, so what we're looking for here is iteration is 8. Number of times the operator will be repeated. So as you can imagine, using a high amount will probably freeze the scene. So looking for the right geometry. Looks good. Z axis. And another. So the global seed is for the next update beyond 2.5. This I haven't put in the new version number. So this update is going to be beyond 2.5. If you're watching this as an older video in the future. So um I guess this is it. We can use this. Now we need to create some details on these base meshes. So I'm going to use random loop extrude. So original only will be renamed loop from source in the next update. So this means that it will only extrude from the source mesh and not on the generated loop objects. I'm going to open up the panels using the inset thickness. Increase the resolution, it's already been increased. Reduce the size maximum. So what the number means is on the top. So number one is walk solver. Number two is the radial solver. You can switch to number. There we go. Let's try and use vertex group. So the top faces will be assigned to us the vertex group, and we can easily select it later. To add more chaotic shapes. So next up is this geometry here. So I'm going to use random panels since I'm only going to use just one layer. Okay, radial. Why is it set on radial? Cuts is so the spikes is coming from the because the details are wrapping on the sharp corner. So most of these spikes will be coming from this type of geometry here. So in order to avoid that, we can actually just use split instead of wrap. So wrapping means that the detail will wrap on sharp corners. Try and wrap on sharp corners like that. And with split, it will split the sharp corners. So you can use split to avoid these spikes on some geometry. And if you really want if you really want the wrap method, so you can just mark sharp the areas that are causing the spikes, and using the random panels, it will cut that part without actually just randomizing it. Cut that part manually, uh, um, besides the randomized panel detail. So we're using one, we split, and using lower subdivision, I'm going to edit the thickness and the depth and the size as well. Percent, increase the resolution, maybe just use number, and use vertex group as well. So it's kind of slow for high resolution. So make sure to turn it on after you have edited the major properties. Going back to 0, going to affect the random height. Let's try a walk. Go. And set this to 50. Do the same thing to the other random loop extrude. Let's try subdivision number 2. Okay, I'm going to use random scatter and, oh no, random cells. Increase the depth. Going to create those tiny little tiny antennas that just pops up anywhere. So to decrease the size, we must increase the resolution. But be careful. So we're going to use 1%. Go to number and just so you can specifically set it to the right value. So individual. Switching to individual is slower because the script has to iterate on every created cell and instance, and then create a different depth setting for them. So it is slower. Okay. So those are our antennas. And let's do the same thing for the other one. I'm using Alt and then right click. So it shows me every object that's underneath the mouse cursor. I can quickly pick it from under the layering, the detail layering that I did using random flow. So you can see here I can select the cube. Oh, not that cube. This cube without actually hiding this geometries out of the way. Okay. Um, Using random cells, those cool antennas. So you can of course model the result manually. You don't have to actually leave them alone every time. You can actually put in some details of your own after you generated a base mesh using the add-on. Okay, I'm going to try one shift G vertex group. Okay, so that selected the top faces only and not the sides. So I'm going to random cells sharp and decrease the depth, and then where's the thickness? There we go. Increase the island size. So this is going to be basically just create some chaotic details that will match up with the texture later on. Increase there we go. 1000. Probably just use percentage. It's too chaotic. Island size is one. Oh, the pool size. Here adjacent, so no neighboring faces. That looks better. Do the same thing for the other. Shift G, vertex group. Oops, accidentally increased the subdivision. Now I have to wait 0. Okay, let's try and texture this. I'm just gonna use the materials from my past. I am going to make a video that will show the texturing process, but for now, since I have a thing with my eye and I can't really see anything, just the major shapes of this. I can't really read the letters that much, but I can see the shapes of the objects clearly. Okay, so when it's fixed, I'm going to make a video on that. But for now, I'm just going to append the material that I have already used in the past. So this ground and then material. So this is gonna be the ground, and this one here is going to be. I'm going to set a color first, vertex color for each island, and assign a material. Because this material is using a vertex color, probably rename this to something like panel or slash panel and of H. Let's use an HDRI, this one, and try and see what we got. Something wrong with the roughness. Okay, I'm going to shift the or change the angle this of the HDRI so we can see this part better. I'm going to fix the roughness of this one, of this material. Go to shader, roughness, set this to default. It's displaying black because I'm using UV. So instead of UV, I'm going to use object and change this to box because object doesn't work with the flat projection. And if you switch to UV, switch it back to flat, not box. So this is J's placement texture, by the way, but you can make your own sci-fi patterns using random flow on just a plane, and then creating pattern here, and then baking it, and then using it as replacement for J's placement textures if you want. So I can't see most of it. I think it looks fine. See how I'm moving around and watching the model from different angles. I'm trying to judge the way it looks on, yeah, the different angles and the way the outside profile and the inside uh, profile looks, or the outer shapes and the inner shapes. The outer shapes and the inner shapes correspond to each other. And also don't forget the textures because you might have the greatest and the most beautiful geometry or model, but if you fail on the texturing, then it you would have wasted the geometry. So even with, for example, this one here, we have the primary shape that we used as a base, and then we have this. For this scale, we have the secondary shape, and then for the tertiary, we have some spatterings of tertiary details, but most of the tertiary details we can achieve using textures. if you want the, yeah, using textures. Okay. So we have our Moa. So this, I think this is the side that NASA got, and that's why they thought that it was just an ordinary asteroid. But if they only turned around and watch this size, then they'll see s- there's actually a base here. Oh my God. Okay. Uh, let's create the Starship. Of course, it's selected, and then use this position here. A random Starship. In the updates, uh, it will have new properties. You will have to reinstall the properties because of the new settings or the new properties. So yeah, it's easy. The installation video is already there. Random Starship. I'm going to use my, what's this, wing sharp preset. Okay, and just rescale it later. Probably position it here and then reposition it there later. Okay, a random Starship, um wing sharp. Going to increase this to 2 and 2 so I can see the shapes better. Actually, this can already work. I'm going to use 12 hull sections. So you can see that the extrusions here allow for shapes that can look like a bridge for the ship. Okay, so let's use the new property. So there are no more tolerances here. There's only expansion, and if you use this, it will expand the areas covered by the front or the back. And we also have the taper or the x-axis. Uh, Z depth. That's not the taper. Okay, so the taper, and for the z-axis as well. Okay, let's just do some. Let's just use some 5 expanded expansion on the back and on the front, two expansions, and then extrude extrude some kind of wing here, and then taper. Okay, now we're going to, and also the wings will have the main wings and the winglets now, so their properties will now be separated. And also in the winglets, there's going to be view limit and the wing limit. And the wing limit is, the view limit means that, for now it's using the value of 2. It means that under the if the subdivision here doesn't match the number here, then the wings will not show up. So if I use subdivision 2, then the winglets show up. So this is because the winglets are the last to be generated, and if you're trying to seed the hull, they are jumping everywhere. And also if you change the plating, they will also jump everywhere and it's confusing. So I use this. So you can seed the hull and the rest of the categories without the winglets jumping from place to place. Okay, this looks good. So random seed using a lower subdivision. Then if you If you like the shapes that is generated, then you can increase the subdivision and also increase the plating detail. Okay, let's see the hull, the winglet. Oops, where did you go? Okay, let's use this and scale this. Don't forget to apply the scale. Rotation and scale. And then we're also going to color this black and white. But since this is Unimesh, not like this, which is separated by base islands, so it has a system for it, and it's called this is the new category, which is sharp. So when using plating detail, it creates those marked sharp boundaries, islands. I mean, yeah, the extrusions have been their boundaries have been marked sharp and also marked with a seam. So the you can use the random vertex color to actually create color for the um, mesh using this method. If there is no marked sharp edges, then you can use the use seams method. It will use the seams instead. So for random objects, you can actually use this dirty vertex color. So for random objects, you can actually use this thing. So for example, this I will use plate and sets 3 and crystal subdivision. This will also have marks clear the sharp, clear the seams. So you can use create a bundle to get sharp edges based on the threshold. Use F9 to bring up the redo panel and mark sharp those selected edges. Or the vanilla blender also has a command for this. Uh, select sharp, select sharp edges. F9, you can set the threshold, and then after this, Control E and mark sharp. Then you can use the random vertex color. Okay, and if you can also use another method, and the seams smart UV project 66 degrees. Go to UVs and then UV seams from islands, and then with this you can also color activate the toggle use seam, and then you can color this one also. So for just for other objects, you can use this dot method for other objects that are not generated using random flow and random starships. Okay, I'm going to use the panel here as well. Select some of the objects that have been using the shader. So what I did there is click on this icon, drag it, and place it on the object. And then now the object has it. Okay, let's view this without the rest of the models. I can, I hope I can see the okay, let's create a separate shader for this, but copy this. So click this icon here, new material from this one. So panel O1, so rename this. So be in the habit to name your materials after you created that ship. Also your objects if you want. So at intervals, okay, ship. I'm going to edit the sizes of the textures. So I can't talk while the viewport is rendering because my noise cancellation is tied in with the GPU. So there's a trick here with um so I created a method using plating to actually mark sharp those what is this those plating details, and then use them as a method to create an auto UV function right there. But you can also use this trick to make the texture details line up. You can just you from the side of the shape, or from the depending on the which side you want to use. So let's use the this side. Project from view. Okay, and this is our texture. I mean the UV, and this is how it projects on the texture. So you can see the textures lined up mostly on this side, but because we have it projected here, depending on the size of this area and this area and this area, it will have stretching. The texture will stretch like from here. Okay, I forgot we are using object, not UV. So let's set this back to UV. So let's set this back to flat UV, and set this back to flat as well. Okay, that's about it. And let's see the result. So there you saw the stretching here, and we also have a stretching on this back. There you go. But on this side, it's perfect. But the trick here is to, when you're rendering this, to make the ship is to hide this part, to hide the stretches. Okay, to hide the stretch at the areas where to hide the areas where the textures are stretching. So that's one UV trick you can use. Or um, project use the same method, project from view, and then get the top faces, the areas that have a stretching, and then select them. Wait, select. Okay, just for the sake of example, we're going to select just this part. So select all the areas that have stretching, and then project from view as well. Okay, so I'm gonna try and capture the. Okay, let's try and capture the top part just to show you the tricks. that you can use using the UVs, different UV techniques. Okay. I'll not include the front part. Hey, this is a good idea for the for a support add-on. Okay, just for the sake of example, project from view, and oh, we got the, okay, let's repeat that. Project from view. Okay, how do I select the faces that are, okay, so you get the idea. So if we render this, you can see that the stretching is gone from this part. Okay, so you can use the project from view this way to actually UV the Starship and not use the default way of you doing it. Okay, let's create the exhaust. This has a lot of details on the butt part, but I can of course afford to lose it. I need to manually delete something to make the exhaust. Um, because of the nature of the randomization, uh, we really need to, you really need to, or you sometimes you have to uh, modify the topology manually. So for example, you like one part, you like most part of the randomized geometry, but there's a part that is there are some parts that you don't like, so you need to choose to either continue with the randomization or manually just fix the part that you don't like after. So K is for knife. So before actually going to using Blender, I was using Maya and trying to unlock the secrets of the quads using edge extrusion modeling. That's why you see me sometimes edit topology effortlessly on some of my videos. That's because I have already, what is, I have some experience with it in Maya. What is this? Oh, loose geometry. And then when it first came to Blender, there was actually no ingons. It was so old that Blender was so old that it has no capability of creating ingons. Did you experience that version? You can only do tries. There is no ingons. There are no ingons, and ingons are quite useful, of course, with hard surface, and also when you are trying to, uh, of course, modify the topology or edit the topology. Flatten. I think this is clear seam. Let's fix this. Mark seam. Okay, select this part. Use creative flow, vertex color, pick. There we go. And then you can use this part as the exhaust and extrude something here. Probably just extract a face. So we can edit the topology without affecting the base. The auto mirror, reset F. Okay. I'm hoping to delete the edges on the inside. No X. Do not dissolve verts. Okay. And use, wait a minute, auto mirror, use quad slice, 0.01. Okay, and alt H, make it a real geometry, apply mesh, and then reestablish the mirror. So I have applied the solidify modifier. Link flat faces. Apparently that's not flat. Okay. B. And then extrude here. Oh, now we got our should do exhaust of let's create a new material to this material. Assign V color material. Don't use vertex color, just base, and change this to emission, and some really simple emission effect using Voronoi. Control this with a color ramp. Set the strength to something like 20, and use distance. I'm going to use the round one, and UV this, project from view. See what we got. Scale. So I'm going to modify the scale. Okay, the distribution, the faces are not actually. I'm going to use the rectify function in text tools. Make flat faces and text tools, shift layout, flatten this. Oh, okay. Why is it? Wait, rotation scale. Oh, sorry about that. The reduce the randomness to 0. That's it. Had to move the UV to fix the symmetry line. Okay, let's see the whole scene. Okay, you can add more stuff to this, like other because I think in reality, Oumuamua had smaller satellites too, but they didn't just see it. So it may have some escorts that are actually flying, being affected by the gravity of the asteroid. Let's knock out the I may need to download some new HDRI, especially with just pure sky or space. So forgive me if the textures are not too awesome. Um, this is as far as my eye can take me. I may need to use glasses. Actually, use glasses. Okay, so this side is what NASA saw, and this side is where the interesting stuff is. Okay, so this is how I created the asteroid base and also the asteroid. You can create other stuff like this. This can work with multiple objects, by the way, the quick displacement. So for example, for so not too much, of course, because it will using thousands will probably crush your crash blender. But here, maybe 20 or 10 or something like that. So you can create and also the randomization is different per object. So when creating this, you can create the satellites as well, and then use the multi object functionality for that. Okay, so this is our um asteroid base. So you see what I did there? So those shapes. So what I essentially made using the randomization is are the shapes that look something like from certain distance or vantage points look something like what might constitute as a sci-fi building. You see what I mean? So it depends on the user. So the shape so my brain is referencing on the shows that I've watched from before or the art that I've seen. So that is probably what affects uh the shapes that I'm going for when randomizing stuff with the add-on and also the shape. So besides the texturing, you also have to uh use lighting. So my suggestion is don't be afraid of the light and don't be afraid of the shadows as well. Don't use too much shadows. Don't hide all the beautiful geometry that you made. Instead, create some interesting points using light and shadow. Okay, so if you want some mystery, you can expose some parts, then hide some places and let the viewer's imagination figure out what's on those parts. Something like that. Okay. So we have our geometry, a texture, and the lighting. Then all you have to do is render. Okay. So yeah. So watch out for the next update. I am probably so when I finish with the updates, I let a few days pass by to see if I need to add some, if I discover something, some new feature to add, or discover a few bugs, then I create the changelog videos and then update the stores. Okay, so just wait for the email. Um, yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, again, use the comment section or the links in the description. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.